Hi, welcome to Module 3 of this ICL 71-74 course. We are looking this week at Chapter 2 of the textbook. There will be a quiz on the material covered. There's also an article by Stephen Krashen for you to read and respond to in Dropbox. There is, of course, the blog. You have 3 questions from which to choose, and you can respond to one or all of those questions, reflecting on what you have read in the textbook, what you experience as a teacher or as a student, and then you will read the blog of your classmate and post a comment to that. So Stephen Krashen is one of the giants of language acquisition. In his article, he talks about input hypothesis, and when his article was published back in the 60s, this was quite a revolutionary idea, a new theory of how we understand language and how we learn language. And one of his ideas is that language acquisition must be done not only consciously but subconsciously. This is a really interesting idea, and that students have to be receptive in order to subconsciously acquire language, which in a classroom setting, that is not always easy for all students to be stress-free, to be relaxed, to not have any anxiety. For some students, being in a school environment raises the anxiety level. Also, the idea that you subconsciously acquire language, which in a if you are in an environment in which language is spoken, if you are in a foreign country, if you are amongst people, all of whom are speaking that language, then subconsciously you are acquiring language. Now, when you move into a classroom, the expectation is there that this is what we are doing. We are acquiring language. And so it is perhaps more difficult to be receptive and also to allow yourself to subconsciously acquire language. I think students have the expectation that they need to understand, is this correct? Am I saying it right? I'm not going to say it if I'm not saying it correctly. I don't understand this. And there's lots of environmental factors that perhaps inhibit the ability to acquire language. So it's a really interesting article. This input hypothesis is one of 5 hypotheses that he had that together form language acquisition. Now, he is not without his critics. One interesting critic of his theory is that not only do students have to, or language learners have to understand not only the message but also the literal meaning behind the message, which is an interesting idea. Again, some people disagree with that also, but one example that springs to my mind is when students are learning and they learn how to say their name, and frequently students say me llamo es. They understand when they're asked como te llamas, that a name, you've been asked for your name, and their response is me llamo es, and that is because they don't understand the literal meaning of me llamo es, me llamo, which is I call myself, and they think of it like mi nombre es, my name is. And so that would be an example of message comprehension versus literal meaning. And so his critics, who are Wolfgang Butzkam, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and John Caldwell in their article in 2009, that was their rebuttal of this idea that learning is only subconscious. However, Kreshten's theory is a cornerstone of the natural approach to language learning, the holistic, student-centered approach. And so whilst there are critics with any theory or learning model or hypotheses, over time other academics come in and build on them, or through different understanding of how we learn or how the brain works, these are changed, they are developed, if you will. And so think about all these things, and whenever an article or information, and indeed the book or what I say, always be willing to disagree based on what you have learned, based on your own experiences. And that's why it's important that just because Stephen Krashen is, some would consider, a linguistic god, doesn't mean to say that everything about language acquisition that he has theorized is true in all circumstances. So I hope that gives you something to go on for this week. If you've any questions or comments, please post in discussions. Muy buena suerte. Good luck.